We're going to move on to our pairs panel now, a session highlighting a diverse experience of those navigating Stargardt disease together, whether as family members, friends, or other sighted supporters. This discussion will be led by Ellen Gould, who will be guiding 3 incredible pairs in sharing their unique journeys. Each pair brings a different perspective from new diagnoses to lifelong experiences and the ways they've supported each other along the way. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ellen Gould.
Yes, I think there, got it. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. And I am beyond thrilled to be moderating the pairs panel because I can tell you for sure that each and every one of the pairs you're gonna hear is a moderator's dream. Now, I've been asked to do about 5 minutes to introduce myself and talk a little bit before we begin the panel. But before we begin, I have a question for all of you. What do you call a person with Stargardt? And I don't mean, oh, they have Stargardt disease. A name. Anybody? If you're just... Yes, thank you. So, a Stargardian is what's floating around these days, I think, maybe, I don't know, maybe from this group. But today, I'd like to use the word stars. It's a little less, sorry, woohoo, Martian Stargartian, and for sure, a little more glam, but really because all of you stars in this room and out there in cyberspace are going to get to have your light reflected in the stories you're going to hear today. So why pairs panel? Because you're going to get to hear stories from both sides of the stars and the stars' families. Okay, so why am I here? First, I love story. And I guess you could say I do story for a living. I'm an actor, a writer, and now also a producer working on the first ever fiction film about us, we're gonna get our story way out there. And, well, I'm more here for another reason. I'm here because I have Stargardt. And it's my hope that maybe my story will encourage all of you, no matter what you're dealing with, to still dare to imagine, yes, Kenyatta, imagine your dream, and then let it lead you to whatever surprising place it takes you. Now, I know a lot of you are already doing that because I've gotten a chance to speak to you and wait till you hear the panel. And I also know that surprises are not all equal. When I was first diagnosed at 15, I wasn't so sure I was going to be able to do my own dream. I mean, trying to make it in New York as an actor is already an act of intentional insanity. But I'm a stubborn dreamer. And at the beginning of my career, I actually got some great roles. And then my slowly progressing vision loss made it harder and harder for me to do the cold auditions. They give you a script, little print, it was awful. And then when I managed to get a part, having to work with that script in rehearsals was a nightmare. Well, after about 10 years, my career hit a total dead zone. And in desperation, I actually started writing my own solo musicals so I could keep working. And then one of them landed off Broadway, and one of them went on PBS, and that won 2 Emmys. And then I got an Emmy for my performance, and then the one I really treasure the most, for writing. Yeah. So, as one of the characters in that Stargardt film, I hope you're going to get to see, says, just because you can't see where you're going doesn't mean you're not gonna get there. Yeah. So I'd like to end my part of this with a story around the making of Seeing Stars. That's the title of the film, because it really is about the way I see us, the way I see you. When I was first writing Seeing Stars, I had this wacky hypothesis that there had to be some kind of connection between Stargardt and stars. So I reached out to an astronomer at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, and, you know, she was this curious scientist and also a really playful spirit. She was so up for the exploration. And she said to me, so tell me about Stargardt. And when I told her about how we have to look from the side to see what's directly in front of us, she got so excited. She said, I have it. I've got your connection. You may not know this, but everyone has to look from the side to see a star. Everyone. Even me, she said, with, you know, perfect sight. If I look directly at a star, it disappears. I have to, well, to find it, I've got to look from the side with my peripheral vision, because that's where more light receptors are. Astronomers even have a special name for that kind of seeing. They call it averted vision. But some astronomers, they call it averted imagination. That's us, right? That's us. So now, I want all of us to avert our imagination and put some focus on this stellar panel that's about to come up on stage. Please, let's welcome Oh, I'm so happy. I don't mean to be happy that you're crying, Bhavna, but I know you are so, oh my God, there's so much love and feeling on this stage and in this room. I think we're all feeling it, right? This is our time. So, the first pair you're going to hear is living in the first chapter of the Stargardt story, the shock of the diagnosis. And we are gifted to be able to hear that still present experience from a most loving and dynamic, wait till you hear her, mom, and her superstar daughter. Please give a warm Stargardt welcome to Sarah Danny and her 11-year-old daughter, Lucia.
Hi, my name is Lucia. I am 11 years old. I love to sing, cheer, draw, and write stories. I have Stargardt disease. I like the name because it has the word star in it, but I hate the part that says disease. I am here today to tell you a little bit of my big story. I have spent a lot of my childhood going to different eye doctors to see what glasses would help me see better. Each appointment was always the same. No glasses really helped me. Also, many doctors told my parents that I really could see fine and just wanted to and was just looking for attention. I hated that. So I kept going on with my life without being able to see very well and not thinking much about my eyes. The only time I would think about my eyes is when people would comment that I was the only one of the 6 kids in our family with brown eyes. Everyone else had blue eyes. I played lacrosse, basketball, soccer, hockey, gymnastics, dance, and even tried archery. Some of those I was really good at. Others almost seemed impossible to me, and I wondered why. I never could get a rebound in basketball. I always wanted to score, but had a hard time finding the hoop. When I tried archery, everyone would stand far away from me. And I don't blame them. The diagnosis of Stargardt was obviously devastating, but at the same time reassuring, because I finally could understand why I had trouble seeing, and there was a name for it. Now the doctors had to believe me. The devastating part is there was no cure. Now my days are spent focusing so much on my eyes and my vision. I have special vision teachers at school and have to use all these complicated devices just to be able to see words and numbers in the classroom. I love school and I'm good at it, but I wish to do school the way school is designed for most kids. Being blind is tough. I don't like it, but I don't let it stop me, and am excited to have one of the lead roles in my school's musical.
Yeah.
I will be the Cat in the Hat. My parents promise me that everything will be okay, and I believe them.
So just to let you know, Lucia wrote that speech. Might be hard to believe that that could come from an 11-year-old, but my husband and I can attest that nights before bedtime were spent of her writing this. So those are her words, verbatim. Yeah. So I'm going to follow suit and introduce myself and tell you a little bit about what she just described, but from my perspective as her mother. Hello, my name is Sarah. As you can clearly hear, my husband and I have an incredible daughter up here on stage. Lucia has been extraordinary since the day she was born. As our first child, we remember the doctors explaining what an Apgar test was for newborns, and warned us that it is highly unlikely that a baby gets a perfect score of 10 on it and not to worry about what number they give us. Well, Lucia scored a perfect 10. We knew from the get-go that Lucia was going to do things differently in this world. We just didn't know that the struggle she was going to be forced to do those things differently would be so challenging. As Lucia mentioned, the story of her eyes began with years of confusing doctor's appointments where we were told her eyes were normal and fine. And as I've met so many new people with Stargardt or families of Stargardt, it's very sad that we can relate exactly the same story for I don't know how many decades. So the way that I've heard Kenyatta describe this, Ellen, as you'll hear other family members, sadly, it's the exact same story every time, and that's something my husband and I are hoping is going to change. moving forward for when someone gets a diagnosis of Stargardt. It wasn't until her 4th grade math teacher contacted us about some odd things she noticed Lucia doing in class, like walking right up to the board to see, missing things that were written in color, and so on. From this information, we decided to take Lucia to a specialist at Children's Hospital, September 14th, 2023. This day is the day that flipped our family upside down. This is the day that we first heard and that I read scribbled on the back of the doctor's business card the word Stargardt. As I know, this story can sound very familiar to each of you personally or maybe even professionally. I would like to take my last minute or two here to share some things that I've learned over the past year and a half of my life. Growing up myself in a family of teachers, nurses, and therapists, I always heard the phrase, in order to take care of others, you have to take care of yourself. I understood it and could relate to it with the airplane warning of putting on your oxygen mask before putting one on your child. However, I thought those phrases were just for the weak. I thought that strong people like me, they didn't have to follow that rule. The fall of 2023 taught me very quickly that I was wrong. No matter how much researching, calling, arguing with doctors, and praying, I was not on the track to being the wife and mother that our family needed. The panic attacks and the crying that started to consume my life started to hurt my own family until I hit my breaking point. While on a trip with my husband and Lucia in another state to visit a doctor to look into clinical trials to try to slow the progression of Lucia's vision loss, I finally caved. It was after this breakdown that I realized it was time for me to help myself. I could not help my husband and my 6 small children without first helping me. I immediately started therapy, and then, only then, did I start to take care of my family. So my message to everyone here today in this room or watching on their screens is that none of us are too strong to not need to take care of ourselves. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is the pathway to taking care of those who you love the most. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, Lucia, you really are a star. And so is your mom. Before we go to the second chapter, just briefly, now being more in the parent or grandparent age, I mean, I had no idea what my parents were going through. Not that we're not concerned about ourselves, right? But we know we can do whatever we're gonna do, right? And I understand that the parents watching this, it's a whole different thing. And that's part of what we're going to be able to hear as we go to the second chapter. You're going to hear from Bhavna Taylor, another remarkable mom who actually started the first support org for Stargardt in the UK when her son Ethan was diagnosed. That is passion and purpose-driven, and she is remarkable as every single person on this stage is. And Ethan is a smart, thoughtful, charming teen who is now 11th grade, right? Or you're looking toward 11th year. It's different in UK. Wait, yeah, translate. And you're going to hear about his changing vision and how he's adapting to the ongoing move of this story. So please, another warm welcome for Ethan and Bhavna Taylor.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah? Thank you, Ellen. So I'm Bhavna, as Ellen said, and this is Ethan. And Ethan was diagnosed when he was 7 years old. That's 10 years ago. And I'm going to talk about initially our diagnosis journey, which is very similar to what Sarah talked about, because it's ingrained in my life. I will never forget the day my son was diagnosed, it's like yesterday. So with Ethan, we'd been on holiday actually, and I noticed that he was struggling to see from the distance. Prior to that, we'd had no issues with his vision. We had yearly checks at the opticians and nothing been picked up. So I took him to opticians thinking he needed glasses. And the first thing, what they said was that he couldn't read the sight chart properly, and with corrective lenses, it wasn't correcting his vision. And very similar to what you said, Sarah, they said that actually he's making it up and he wants glasses. And I was thinking, you know your child, and there's nowhere, he wasn't making it up. I knew that there was something going on. I went for a second opinion because I thought, actually, I'm not sure about what this, what they'd said, and I couldn't make head of it. And so they said, she said exactly the same thing, that he was struggling to see he was struggling, and with corrective lenses, it wasn't going to correct his eyesight. And I thought, well, what does that mean? And I couldn't get my head around it, and we did a referral. And I think I did the right thing. We've got a really big specialist eye hospital not too far from us, and went there, and he got the diagnosis of Stargardt's disease. And I think the day he was we were told there's no treatment, no cure, come back a year later, and I think my whole world turned upside down, because you rely on sight so much. And I was thinking I remember one of the three things thinking, how is he going to go to school? He's in a mainstream school. How is he going to read? How is he going to how is he going to be educated if he can't see? You rely on your vision so much. The second thing I thought about was his friends. Ethan will speak in a bit, and you can tell that he's Mr. Sociable. He has so many friends, and I thought, if you can't see your friends, how are you going to make new friends? How is he going to continue to socialize? And activities, that was what I was really worried about. He played the piano, the guitar, played football, and those are my initial kind of thoughts. Just wondering how he would lead his life. And I'm going to pass it on to Ethan, because his diagnosis, his journey that initial story was different from mine.
Hello, I'm Ethan. A quick note I just wanted to say before, because I'm 17, I've been diagnosed for 10 years now, but for Lucia, obviously you've been kind of recently diagnosed, and you're starting your kind of big school journey. I just want to say that there will be ups and downs, but you'll get through it. There's going to be, good moments and bad moments, but you'll get through it. So in this first part, I just want to talk about my perspective of when I was first diagnosed. So as I said, I was diagnosed when I was 7 years old, and I kind of, as a 7-year-old, you don't know what, visual impairment blindness really is. I just thought that you either wear glasses or you don't, and that was, end of story. So I remember talking to my mom, saying, like, when I was going to get my eyes tested, and say, I wonder which glasses would look good on me. So, I didn't know that I was going to have a visual impairment. And I guess that for many years, I never really understood what visual impairment really was. But as my mom was saying, I was quite a sociable person. I was quite a people person. I love my friends, and we had a good kind of, in my school, we had a good, social group, and a social kind of, everyone was really social, basically. So I remember what was important to me when I was 7 and first diagnosed was that kind of awareness within my school. So I remember setting up an assembly to the whole of my school when I was around maybe, how old was I? About 8 years old. I did a whole assembly to my school talking about my visual impairment and how it affected me, because I feel like that understanding is so important, especially at people at a young age. As I said, that when you're young, you don't really understand what a visual impairment really is, and people, when they hear the word blind, they just think you see nothing. But it's such a large spectrum of what you see. So when I was at that age, I thought it was really important for all my peers to understand what my visual impairment was really like, and to get that support. And when they did understand, you really kind of, it really changed everything. When they understood, that level of support really came in, and much more understanding, and everyone kind of understood me. And it was something about that level of awareness I just found to be so kind of like touching and so important to me. And yeah, I'm just going to hand it back to my mum here.
So yeah, and I think that's our story.
We should wait for the next round and you'll talk because I want to make sure we all, is that okay, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we come to our third pair. It's Carroll Center's own Barb Duffy and her husband, Paul. Yes. And you're going to give him a second round, too, because I'm just going to tell you, Barb is, everyone who knows her, disarmingly honest and pretty funny. Paul, I don't know you yet, but I look forward to it soon. Less funny. You can't have two in one family, right? So speaking of two in one family that are different, they have a shared son, wonderful, now adult, very successful guy named Jack, who you're going to hear later today. And they had very different feelings about growing up, him growing up and watching with their fears, their hopes, their expectations. And that you're going to hear about right now. So please give it up for Barb and Paul Duffy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the warm welcome. So I have a very handsome son who's over here, who'll be on a panel, Jack, who is now 27, who was diagnosed at 8 years old. And I want you to know that our third pediatric ophthalmologist, who was flanked by Dora the Explorer, while Jack was sitting in the little chair, accused Jack of lying. The good news is that doctor's still alive. And he's now practicing in New York. Any of you who know me and my parenting, he's lucky he got out of Massachusetts alive. So we all share that, which is so frustrating. But anyway, the man we ultimately saw who was wonderful, a retinologist at Tufts New England Eye Center, I was away on business. My husband was with Jack. Jack was 8. He wrote it on a piece of paper. He folded it and he said, you and your wife should go home and research this. That was it. Okay, so now Jack's thrilled because he thought he was stupid. I'm not stupid, right? Because he has 3 older siblings. But in the meantime, as his mom, if I had my way, Jack would still be living in our house wrapped in bubble wrap because I absolutely did not want him to take a step outside. You know, I immediately had DPW put in caution blind person, which does nothing except, I think, make people accelerate. And so for us, how I handled it and what I wanted for Jack as his mom was sort of your typical, I need to protect my kid. I can't have anybody give him grief. I can't have him be unsafe. I want to just hold him tight, which is a mother's instinct, but is also not realistic for the growth of the family member with Stargardts. So I'll tell you how this wonderful husband of mine handled it, which is very different than me.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, obviously we shared the same passion and concern, but my approach was a little different. And for those parents, both here and virtually, Jack is the youngest of our 4. And when we first had our first child, Sam, you know, there were books like what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect when you've got a toddler, what to expect. But there were no books on what to expect if you've got a child with Stargardts, right? So this was a new part of our exploration, new part of our journey. And frankly, as a parent of somebody with a visual impairment, it doesn't have to be Stargardts. You know, a lot of it is a combination of instinct and information, right? Because there really is no clear path. And even if you talk to Stargardt's folks, they'll tell you that their journey is slightly different, right? The progression of the disease is different. How they respond is different. But I was bound and determined to make sure that my youngest had the same opportunities as all of my kids. And frankly, that included sports. He still skis. He's an avid skier. He skis faster than me now, which I'm sure if Barbara was with me, she would approve of. And frankly, we did some things that were, I'm not going to encourage you to do this, but Jack did a decent amount of driving because he wanted to drive, right? He was like every 16-year-old. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to give this kid a chance to drive. We'd go to parking lots and malls, and I'd be with him, of course. And at one point, he was a better driver than his two older sisters. So certainly more cautious than when they were 16. But I would say there are a ton of resources out there. There's a ton of information, but you have to trust your instinct. You have to know your child. You have to know their limits. Fortunately, Jack, although as the youngest is kind of the daredevil of the family, he also knew when to hold himself back, and that made things easier on me. So at different points, unfortunately, he was like, Dad, I can't play baseball anymore. I can't see the ball. Dad, I can't play basketball because, when they throw me a pass, I can't catch it. And he did continue to play soccer and actually led his soccer team in junior high school. But we did find other things to do together, mostly. We ATV'd, we snowmobiled, jet skied, and we still do a lot of those things. So what I would say to you is, as parents, and certainly as folks living with Stargardts, is you know what you can do. You know your kid. Trust your instincts. Gather the information, and this is an important part of it, right? This Stargardt Summit, you'll be able to talk to people who have already experienced some of the things that you will likely experience. So don't be afraid to reach out. We really didn't. We frankly did a lot of this stuff ourselves. And as a guy, as a father, I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out by myself. I'm going to take care of my son. And that was immature and impertinent, right? Because I couldn't do that. I thought for sure, we did a couple of trials as well. We went and tried to find experts. And the fact of the matter is, we need each other, and we need more information. And collectively, with people like Alkeus and the Carroll Center, we're on the right path. I do want to end with this also, because we can't hold our kids back, right? That's the instinct of my beautiful wife, Barbara. But Jack ended up being the first blind mechanical engineer graduate from Worcester Polytech, WPI. He's got his own electric jet ski startup. He's the CEO. And he probably would not have achieved that unless we said, you can do anything you want, right? And that's the most important message I think we could pass on to our kids. This is not going to hold you back unless you let it hold you back. So God bless you all. I hope that we come back here a few years from now and everybody's like, hey, my vision is completely restored. I don't think it's going to happen in a couple of years, but we're heading in the right direction. So let's all keep up working together and putting pressure on those who make those decisions to allocate more resources. And God bless you. Thank you.
So we're going to do a second round now. I'm going to ask each of the pairs to talk briefly about something present for them right now that they're dealing with. So, Sarah, Lucia.
Well, we have somebody who's going to be coming up to join us, which I know you had planned a special part. Not yet? Okay. So something present that we're dealing with is actually the part where my husband and I are trying to do what you guys just shared about letting them see what their limitations are, all of our kids, without bubble wrapping. I would love the bubble wrap. I think that sounds like a fabulous idea, and you should patent it. But that's where we're at with, I think another thing too that I just thought of is my husband and I are both in the educational field. And so with our daughter Lucia at school, he and I are trying to figure out how much to be a part of that and how much to not bubble wrap as much. And that's been quite a challenge for us. And I don't think that's going to stop being a challenge, but that's something that came to mind. Do you have anything that you're thinking about right now? She says she's fine. Just true.
You're something a little later that Lucia is going to be a wonderful part of. Surprise coming. So, Bhavna, Ethan, what's going on right now?
So I think we talk about this a lot, and it's about adaptations, I think. I think that's one of the key things that we've learned through this. And as Ethan goes into adulthood, and I think when he was, and maybe he will talk about this a little bit more, but when they're young, you can guide them. You're the one who's doing all the advocating, going to see we have people called QTVIs in the UK, qualified teachers visually impaired. I was the one who's making all those appointments and making sure that all the resources are in place for him. And as he gets older, and he'll talk about this, it's about, okay, you want them to be, fierce and independent and get on with their life and lead the best life as possible. And as a parent, I've got to kind of let go of that a little bit, but also be there with him guiding it. And I think and I think with a progressive condition, those are those adaptations that have throughout. And so, when those vision drops, which he did a bit end of last year, this is gone. It's knowing how to, I'll speak a bit louder. It's knowing how to, is it working now? Yeah, it's knowing how to kind of put those adaptations in place. And I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk about the charity now, or should I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically going on through something that's, I think, going back to our diagnosis kind of story, when he was diagnosed, it was such, as a parent, you don't want anything, you don't want anything to happen to your child that's not positive, I suppose, and knowing that your child's going to lose their vision is not a great thing to hear. And I just wanted something good to come out of this. And the one thing I asked when Ethan was diagnosed was there a specific support group out there for Stargardts? I wanted to meet other people who were going through the same thing, and I knew it was important for him to meet other people, adults who were living it, because I wanted to know that he could live the full life that I want him to live, that I want my children to live, that you'd want your kids to live. And so really with the help of some amazing volunteers, and we set up a charity called Stargardts Connected. I'm one of the founders and the CEO. We're UK based, but we have a global reach. And we had our second conference last year, and which was kindly sponsored. One of our sponsors was Alkiss. But one thing I wanted to do from this is sort of raise that awareness, because we know that obviously we talked about blindness being a spectrum and Stargardts being so unique, and it's rare, so it's that kind of indivisible disability. So that kind of raising awareness among professionals and people, of everyone, is important, and that support aspect's really, really important, because you are an expert in your own condition, and you can relate and speak to others, and that support network is so important, right? So important to have this community out here. And obviously the other thing is kind of seeking a cure, so we fund research as well. So that's really helped me actually through my journey, but meeting other people, meeting amazing people. So I think what's the other thing I'm doing right now, trying to keep that going. And we've got a stand, so if those people are in person, you can visit us and find out a bit more. But as a mum, I'm going to say, and going back to my worries that I had initially, what would I tell the mum then, when my son was diagnosed and told that he was going to lose his vision? Yes, education. We've adapted, and again, awareness and support. He's been able to do lead. He's doing pretty good at school. He can tell you about that. He is Mr. Popular. I've been told he is the most extrovert person. So sight loss has not stopped him making friends. He makes friends like this, so that hasn't, those worries that I had about being social, he's got it. And then activities, well, he'll tell you he learned to scuba dive last year. He doesn't let it stop him at all. There are things you have to change and adapt, and things that maybe, a bit like what you were saying, he's had to not do, but we can do other things. So he can, and the one thing I'm going to sort of finish on as a parent, it's that you are the weather for your children, and I think despite sight loss or not, you've got to instill that can-do attitude and that resilience, and then you're a winner. And I think that's really important that you've got that, and you can instill that all the way through, and that's what I hope to do. I've got 2 children, and I do that with both of mine. So it hasn't stopped him, and I never let it define who he is.
Yes.
So I'm going to quickly talk about kind of my current journey. So as I said, I'm 17 years old, so I'm moving on to adulthood now. And with anyone who's moving on to adulthood, of course, there's so many challenges that face. But as someone who's visually impaired, of course, there's going to be additional challenges that I need to overcome. And similar to what my mum was saying, is all that you need is like small adaptations within your life, small changes to just keep you flowing, to keep you going, and just so you can strive like everyone else can, to be honest. So I kind of, as a family, and similar to what my mom was saying, like, we don't let my visual impairment stop doing what I want to do, as my mom said, like last year I did scuba diving in Zanzibar, and a couple of years back I did skiing in Italy alongside other people who didn't have a visual impairment. So it kind of just shows that no matter what you do, you can kind of achieve what you want. And like for a good example is about me now is that I'm obviously becoming an adult and choosing a career path. Like I'd love to become a chef. That's my kind of goal in life. I mean, if anyone's currently a chef, please do talk to me. I'd like to know some tips. But yeah, so obviously you got me, there's minor adaptation, to kind of achieve what you want. And I think quite a long time ago I had like a small documentary, and I think one of the quotes that I said was, "The limit is what you choose." You can, achieve what you want. You're the only person that hinders yourself, basically, if that makes sense. But yeah, thank you.
So for us, having a child diagnosed in the 3rd grade, there was this segregation of duties up until May of 2021 when Jack and Adonis crossed the stage at Worcester Polytech and got his diploma. And I was kind of the academic coordinator, and Paul was the recreational travel person. And so from May of 2021, honestly, like at one point he got an offer to go to Purdue to get a master's. I said to Paul, I'm gonna have to move there. Like, no, okay? So for the education piece, for me, it was up through high school. It was 6 to midnight, Sunday through Thursday. Then he goes off to WPI, and he has a question for me about thermodynamics, which I know this much about. And so it's, for me, my worry has really shifted. It's shifted away from what you all worry about, which is school and accessibility and friends. And, so I'm sort of in this happy space of watching him live in Boston, be a completely independent human being. So I don't know if you have anything, but I, for one, I felt like I may have, then for me professionally, I made a career switch in February of 2021, and I left where I was working. I was completely stressed out from having to support in any way that I could, get tutors, whatever, and I was sitting at home thinking, what do I want to do for work? I've been a lifelong nonprofit professional. What do I want to do? And I thought, I wonder what it takes to be a TVI, because I knew what a TVI was, right? I thought, I'd love to work with people who are experiencing blindness or vision loss. And don't you know there's a job at the Carroll Center for the Blind where Jack went for summer camps. His orientation and mobility specialist was from the Carroll Center. I interviewed, and I'm in my 4th year there and love it. So I feel very fulfilled.
Yeah, I would say that if you do get a lot of information when you're out there, there are an extraordinary amount of opportunities for folks with visual impairments, right? So we found some organizations that we connected Jack to, and Jack went off to Peru and Machu Picchu with a group when he was like in his, what?
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade, independent of us. He did a whitewater rafting on the Colorado in the Grand Canyon with another group, and so that's part of the growth process, right? Is that independence when he didn't have to depend on us, but had to work with others, is part of what made him an independent and successful adult. But there are a tremendous amount of resources out there. I mean, Jack probably had maybe 20 to 25% of his college education also funded through the Mass Commission for the Blind, through scholarships that are available specifically for people with blind and visual impairments. Because frankly, he had 3 older siblings that I had spent millions of dollars on, who went to college, and now, he was the last one at a place that was going to cost me $250,000. But fortunately, there are resources out there. Those concerns have been somewhat mitigated for us, right? Because he's an independent adult now. But, he was living in Worcester with his startup, and you still have to adapt, right? So there's not a great public transportation system in Worcester, nor is there a robust social life like there is in Boston. So he relocated to Boston. So it's an ever-changing landscape for us and for him. And the key is to be adaptable. I know we're probably over the time, but I just got to say this from my own personal observation. I don't know what it is about a defective ABCA4 gene that makes people more creative and gives them this incredible can-do attitude. But the Stargardt's people that I have met are extraordinary. This panel right here, the folks out in the audience, you very rarely run into somebody with Stargardt's who's like, oh, we'll never make it, we're all doomed. I mean, you know what I mean? They're like, hey, listen, we got this thing. I'm going to work through it. I'm going to be successful. So, I would say continue to connect with your Stargardt's folks and support because they're tremendous. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to give one shout out. We're now fortunate enough to go to Dr. Hutfeld at Mass Eye and Ear for our work.
I got my diagnosis at Mass Eye and Ear, so there were some. I just have to say, one of the reasons why we think outside the box is because we don't see the box. So we're going to do a very quick Q&A because we did go long, and also before we have the little surprise for you, Sarah, I want you to bring up the thing that you didn't because it's important, but not yet. Not another couple. I mean, I'm excited too, and you're wait. Okay.
And then my piece that I was gonna share this second round was going to be about that thing. So that's why I didn't share yet, but I don't know if we have the time.
Wonderful, but it's coming, and oh my God, it's just so exciting. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do though.
Oh, skipping questions.
Oh, we're skipping questions,
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to the heart of this. So there's gonna be a special guest coming up right now, and Sarah first is gonna tell you a little bit about why we get the last most wonderful pair coming up to be with her sister.
So, go ahead.
I just want to say, this is Serafina,
Yep.
but also Arturo.
Yes.
Serafina is, Sarah will tell you, she has Stargardt. These are the Stargardt sisters. But they also, Serafina has a twin, Arturo, who escorted her on stage. He does not have Stargardt, but he is a most wonderful star brother. Thank you, Arturo.
So you are all now doubly graced by 2 of our kids. The other amazing 4, as Ellen already was able to start to introduce, are sitting in our front row up here, and surely will have their own stage to tell their own unique stories one day. With Serafina joining me and Lucia up here now, my final remarks to share are for those of you who fall in one of these categories. And as Kenyatta said, I have a spoiler alert for you as well. It's going to end up being most of you. Maybe you are another family like us with multiple members who have Stargardt disease. Maybe you are a doctor or researcher who works specifically with patients who have Stargardt. Maybe you are a parent of 2 or more kids with or without any rare retinal diseases, or you're a teacher in some way of 2 or more students, and you get the picture. I wanted to share what I actually started learning from my own husband before we even had children, before we were even married. It is the word differentiation. This is a buzzword in the educational profession. As I mentioned before, my husband and I are both in that field of work. But it should not be isolated to classrooms. It should be, and hopefully is, a buzzword in medical and research fields. It should be, and hopefully is, in all families. With Lucia and Serafina sharing the exact same rare retinal disease, even down to the exact genetic coding in their mutations, these 2 girls really only share these identical letters in their genes. Other than that, they are their own unique people with their own unique strengths and challenges. Sometimes, I think this is a really helpful reminder for those of us who may see multiple patients or students a day who are on paper might seem similar or maybe even have labeled the same exact rare disease. But remember, each patient, each family has their own unique story and needs. We are eternally grateful for those who work in the field of visual impairment, especially to those researchers who dedicate their time and passion to finding a cure for blindness. Everyone up here on the stage has their own story with similarities, but we all have our beautiful differences, and as Ellen calls it, our gifts.
I told you, dynamic, right? She is amazing. And so are these 2. And we are going to do a little song for you right now. I get to play Julie Andrews finally. Eventually, with all of your kids, we're going to do this.
They were too tired this morning at the hotel to play along yet.
Oh, okay, we'll do it. So, do you want to start us off, Lucia? Find a note, and I'll join in.
Ready? Just a note, because she's going to. Twee.
Tweet,
Twinkle,
Yeah, do it. Go ahead.
twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high,
like a diamond in the sky. Your twinkle comes from who you are. Twinkle,
twinkle, little
star. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to this wonderful star panel.